Welcome back, class, and hello there, Wolf. Please stop eyeing that server rack. In our last lesson, we used the sandwich metaphor. Well, today, we're looking at the ingredients, the control categories. These are all about how a control actually works. Is it a machine? Is it a human, a fence, or just a piece of paper? So here's our game plan. First, we'll get a handle on what these four ingredients really are. Then we'll dig into each one. Technical, managerial, operational, and finally, physical. And we'll wrap up with a very important reality check to make sure you know what's for the exam versus what's for the real world. Okay, so this is the main idea you need to grasp. When we talk about control categories, we're just asking, how does this thing function? Is it an automated piece of technology? Is it a high-level decision from the bosses? Is it something a person does every single day? Or is it a real object you can go up and touch? First up, let's talk about the gadgets. These are your technical controls. Think of them as the automated workhorses of security. Once you set them up, they do the heavy lifting, enforcing the rules 24/7 without getting tired. Now, for the exam, you need the textbook definition, word for word. Technical controls are implemented using technology, such as hardware, software, and firmware. Listen closely, Wolf. Once I install and configure these, they enforce security automatically. The machine does all the work. And here are a few classic examples. Basically, a wolf's worst nightmare. You've got firewalls, which restrict network traffic, antivirus software, which protects against malware, encryption, which scrambles all our data, and of course, IDS and IPS, intrusion detection and prevention systems. Okay, pay attention because this is a crucial distinction. The principle of least privilege is just a concept, an idea, but the enforcement of it, using actual technical permissions and access control lists or ACLs to make it happen, that action is a technical control. All right, we've talked about the gadgets. Now let's move on to the brains of the operation. These are the managerial controls. This is all the paperwork, the planning, and the big picture strategy. And here is the official definition. Managerial controls are primarily administrative, documented in a written security policy, and they use planning and assessment to manage risk. In other words, these are the big decisions made by the bosses. You can't physically touch them, but you absolutely must obey them. And a very important exam note here. In older exams, you might have seen these called administrative controls. Forget that. For the SY0-701, the correct and only term you should use is managerial. Got it? Good. So what do these look like? Well, key examples include risk assessments, where we decide how serious threats are, vulnerability assessments, where we plan how to look for weaknesses, and of course, the big one, the written security policy, which is basically the organization's official rulebook. And this brings us back to our least privilege example. See, when the boss decides the wolf only gets access to the vending machine, that high-level policy decision itself is a managerial control. It's the rule, not the technology that enforces the rule. Next up, we have the human element. This is where operational controls come in. These are all the things that people do day in and day out to keep things secure. Let's look at the formal definition. Operational controls help ensure that day-to-day operations comply with the security plan. But the most important part of that sentence is this: implemented and executed by people. This is all about human action. So, let me give you the Piggy distinction. It's simple. Managerial is writing the rule. Operational is following the rule every single day. One is the plan, the other is putting that plan into action. So, what are we talking about here? Things like awareness and training, teaching people not to click on those phishing links. Configuration management, that's a person making sure systems are configured securely. And media protection, the procedures for handling USB drives and tapes. And then we have these security guards. Now, this one can be tricky, so listen up, because guards are people following procedures. CompTIA classifies them as an operational control. It's about the human operator. Remember that for the exam. All right, on to our final ingredient. Physical controls. This category is probably the easiest to understand. It's literally anything you can physically touch, kick, or lock that isn't a person. The definition is as straightforward as it gets. These are any controls you can physically touch. We're talking about things like fences, gates, lighting, signs, cameras, locks. You get the idea. Now here's a term you'll definitely see: Bollards. Those are just the heavy concrete or steel posts you see outside of buildings. They're there to act as a physical barrier to stop a car from driving through. Simple, but effective. And another favorite, man-traps. This sounds dramatic, but it's really just a small room with two doors, one on each end, that can't be open at the same time. It physically traps someone in between for identification. Don't get stuck in there, Wolf. Okay, one final, very important note before we wrap up. We need to do a little reality check and talk about how this stuff works on the exam versus how it works in the real world. See, in the real world, you'll be working with big, complex frameworks like Nist SP853. And frankly, they're much more complex and have moved away from classifying controls this strictly because, well, it can get confusing when controls overlapped. So what does that mean for you? Here's the pro tip, and it's the most important thing I'll say today. For the test, stick to the simple, clear CompTIA definitions I just taught you. Don't overcomplicate it. Know these 4 categories and their examples, and you'll be just fine. And with that, we're done for today. So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Now that you know all the ingredients, technical, managerial, operational, and physical, which one do you think is the absolute hardest to implement correctly in the real world? Give it some thought. Great work today, class.